Alright YouTube, so we are back of course to talk about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, and before we even hop into the video, what you're watching in the background is just footage from the first intermission trailer we got in like the end of February, the Yuffie part of that trailer, and the reason for that is because of course today we're here to talk about the like 11-minute gameplay footage that's out there that IGN dropped. I'm not sure if there's other footage out there from other people, and there are people that want to avoid spoilers. They don't want to see that gameplay, so I didn't want to open up the video with some of the new stuff. That way it gives those people a chance to click away from the video if they want to. And to be honest, I've watched this 11-minute video a couple of times now, and I've not seen anything that's like a story spoiler. It's mostly just gameplay stuff. There is one element we're going to talk about that's a potential story thing right at the beginning when we get into it. But other than that, it's pretty much just gameplay things. And a big reason for that, in case you haven't watched this video, is that the commentator says that it's B-roll footage, which is pretty much, if you know what that is, it's just like extra footage. Like, it's probably extra footage from their review video that they're going to do at some point, and they just wanted to take that extra footage and make a video out of it. So either way, let's hop right into it. So the first thing I want to talk about that is a possible story element, but isn't actually new to this gameplay, is that we see Yuffie following a cloaked figure, one of these Sephiroth clones, potentially Marco, because we are in Sector 7, it seems like, for the majority of this DLC. And the reason why it's not new is because a couple days back, we actually had Schrodinger's baby Sil point this out on Twitter, so this has been in previous like footage or images or something somewhere. I just never noticed it. So obviously why this might pertain to the story to some degree is because she's following a Sephiroth clone. It could just be a random side quest or event or discovery or something for Yuffie. It may not even be important to the overall story of the DLC itself, but it is interesting. And if it does end up being Marco, then it's got to tie into the story to some degree because he's obviously in Sector 7. We meet him at the beginning of the game in Remake. He shows up at the end of the game of Remake, turns into Sephiroth, stabs Barret, kills President Shinra. So I definitely think it's going to have some sort of impact on her story within the DLC and tie into the main story somehow. So next up we get another look at Fort Condor, and what I noticed here that stood out to me is the fact that the game has a tactical mode, much like the actual combat for Remake. So you can like pause, slow down time, kind of pick what you want to do. It's not completely like live action where you gotta like think spur of the moment or whatever. Something else I want to mention that isn't new to this gameplay, but was pointed out to me in one of our more recent videos where I kind of broke down a bunch of information for Intermission. We talked about Fort Condor, but right below the timer, it shows exactly how like the combat works in this, where shield beats sword, sword beats bow, bow beats shield. It's something that I completely missed somehow, so I thought I'd throw it in this video as well. Next up, we see Yuffie interacting with a character called Old Snapper, and he has like a side quest, minigame, whatever you want to call it, where she has to collect 6 flyers all around Sector 7, and this is clearly a modern interpretation of the Turtle Paradise side quest from the original game, where you had to collect 6 flyers all around the world of FF7. And in the original Final Fantasy VII, once you got all 6 flyers, you actually go back to the Turtle Paradise bar in Wutai to get your reward, so I can see why they put that, something like that rather, in the Yuffie DLC, because she is, of course, from Wutai. Now, in the original FF7, your reward for completing this is a power source, guard source, magic source, mind source, speed source, luck source, and mega elixir. Within this DLC, I have no idea. The easiest guess, I suppose, would be something materia related, since that's kind of Yuffie's motivation for everything. Next one's kind of a small one, but I thought I'd point it out anyways because the commentator also pointed it out. But we see Wedge in the background as she's looking for flyers, and we've already seen her be near Biggs, Barret, and Tifa. So there's a good chance she's going to at least come across all the Avalanche group, at least like Jessie as well. That's one we're missing. Now, whether or not she actually comes across Cloud or Aerith at some point, or even Red 13, assuming that we even go that far into the first Remake game's story, it's hard to say, obviously. We don't know if we're going to be in Sector 7 this entire time, or if we're going to go beyond it. Next up, the commentator also puts emphasis on the song that plays during this fight scene, which I'm also going to play a clip of because it's a very badass song and it just doesn't sound like that much of a Final Fantasy song. Something else I noticed from this fight on the right of the screen there is after they defeat the Corneo lackeys, Sonon, for one, levels up to level 26, which is a pretty high level, I feel like, for 2 chapters. I don't know if they start at a high level or if you start at a low level and they go all the way to 26. He also gains SP, which is, I think, the first confirmation we have that the DLC will be featuring like the weapon core shit from the first game where you gain SP on leveling up and you can like increase your weapons and shit. So that seems to be within this DLC. And also a small one, but I thought I'd point it out, we do see them obtaining Gil after they beat these guys, which means that Gil will be a factor in this DLC, which we weren't sure of because, again, they put emphasis on her being after materia, but the fact that she is earning Gil seems to imply that there will be, like, shops or something, even if it's just the vending machines to buy, like, potions and shit. So it seems like Sonon is everything a controllable character is without the ability to control them, because you can level him up and he earns SP, which will let you increase the power of his weapons. It seems like they only want him to not be controllable, so they're not using a character with like a polearm style weapon until we get to Sid. So during this gameplay right here, we actually see Yuffie and Sonon synergize, and the commentator didn't seem to know what causes that, but throughout this 11-minute video, you see that happen a few times, and it just seems to happen whenever both of their ATB gauges fill all the way up. And that's what allows them to, obviously given the term synergized, do their synergy attacks. Next up, we see Yuffie and Sonon fighting the Leprechaun enemy, that like ostrich or emu style enemy, whatever the hell it's supposed to be. But it's an enemy from the original Final Fantasy VII. I'm pretty sure it wasn't in the first Final Fantasy VII Remake. And I always like to put emphasis on this because I actually had a couple videos on my channel where we looked at some of the weird, obscure enemies from the original game. And kind of talked about how they might not make it into Remake, but so far they seem to have committed to the weird-ass enemies that exist in the FF7 universe. So this is just another one. It's not really that weird of one, but it's still one from the original game. So nearing the end of things that I personally took note of is we see Yuffie and Sonon riding a conveyor belt and her using her shuriken to like hit boxes at a distance and grab loot, but it seems like there could potentially be missable loot because there's a part where she's throwing the shuriken and it's being blocked by these canister things hanging. So there could be the potential of quote-unquote missable loot. Now, if you can just ride this conveyor belt back and forth repeatedly as much as you want, then obviously you wouldn't ever miss out on loot. But maybe there could be. I feel like that'd be kind of interesting. And the last thing that I really took note of from this gameplay is towards the end of it, we see a couple of fights, and we do see our characters level up, but also their weapons level up, so that also seems to play out the same as it did in the original game. Now, whether or not it's going to be a 5 out of 5 on the weapon levels, and upwards of a 6 out of 6 if there's manuscripts to gather and shit, that obviously remains to be seen. And again, I don't know how it's going to work with it being 2 chapters. Is it 2 chapters, and are they very, very long? Are we leveling from like 1 to 30 or 40 and shit? Are there 5 out of 5 weapon levels? If I had to hazard a guess, I would say that we're going to start at a certain level. Now, what that is, I'm not entirely sure. This is, again, taking place around us bombing these Sector 5 reactors. So whatever our characters were about in the story, like that's, I'm assuming what Sonon and Yuffie are going to be. I don't know what that is, level 15, level 20, somewhere around there maybe. And if that is the case, then maybe we start the game with a certain amount of SP since we've already progressed a lot of levels. Maybe we're already a couple weapon levels in on whatever our weapons are for our characters, and you can just kind of up the weapons how you want to right out the gate. And I think that make a lot of sense since we've already done the grind with the main characters from the first game. We kind of don't need to do that grind again with Yuffie and Sonon. Those are just guesses. And my dudes, that is pretty much the video. It's an 11-minute gameplay video, but to be honest, I only wrote down like 10 or so things, which you would think with as long as this is, and it's a brand new DLC and it's 11 minutes of gameplay, there'd be more things, but I honestly didn't really find a whole lot to write down that I thought was interesting or new. I'm sure I've missed some stuff, and you guys will let me know in the comments 100%. The reaction to this gameplay seems to be overwhelmingly positive from the people that have watched it. Everybody seems to be excited. Everybody's talking about how fast-paced and good the gameplay looks, and the resolution, the frame rate, and all that other shit, man. And with this 11-minute B-roll footage coming out from IGN, I think we can expect, like, reviews relatively soon. Maybe they'll hold them till like pretty close to the release date, but it's pretty weird how early we're getting this. There's still like 2 weeks or something until this actually comes out. Anyways, dudes, the video's long enough. I won't hold you guys anymore. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys aren't wants to update more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on notifications. Follow me on Twitter, @DavidYT. I'm a Discord. Links to my social networks are in the description and in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Low Gain or leave it.